What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 115 of the Idiotic Sports Talk. I'm your host, Liam Gavin, coming to you live from my dining room. And today I just want to give a recap of the first round of the playoffs that happened in the Eastern Conference. We'll start with the Heat beating the Hawks in 5 games. Jimmy Butler with 30.5 points per game, 7.7 rebounds per game, and 5.2 assists per game. This was only in 4 games because he did miss 1 game. Kyle Lowry, 8 points per game, 3.6 rebounds per game, and 5.3 assists per game. He played 3 games, he missed 2. And as for the center, Bam Adebayo, 12.5 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 3.5 assists per game. And Tyler Hero coming off the bench with 12.8 per game. As for Trae Young, he had a rough series, 15 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 5.8 assists per game, and he averaged 6 turnovers a game. Tough series for Trae, but he didn't get that much help as Danilo Gallinari had 10 points per game, Kevin Huerter with 9 points per game, Bojan Bogdanovic with 14 points per game in 4 games, John Collins with 9.5 points per game, and his centers, Okongwu and Clint Capella, combined for just 6 points per game. However, the bright spot was DeAndre Hunter, how he led the Hawks in scoring with 19 points per game. So in game 1, the Heat were able to get the win 115-91. Trae Young only had 9 points. He got clamped by that Heat defense as Jimmy Butler scored 21, and Duncan Robinson had 27 off the bench to give the Heat that dominant win. As for game 2, the Heat win 115-105. Jimmy Butler carried the team on his back with a playoff high of 45 points. Trae Young had 25 points, but the bad thing is Trae also had 10 turnovers. As for game 3, the Hawks get a much-needed win, 111-110. Trae had 25 points. Bojan Bogdanovic with 18 points off the bench. Kevin Huerter, Hunter, and Gallinari all had double digits. And Trae Young had the game-winning layup to give the Hawks the win to make it a 2-1 series. But game 4 is where the Heat bounce back. They win 110-86. Jimmy Butler carries again with 36 points, and Trae Young shut down with only 9 points. And for game 5, the Heat win 97-94. No Jimmy Butler playing, no Kyle Lowry, and they still get it done as Victor Oladipo stepped up, and he was the one with 23 points in the Heat win. And Trae Young with another bad game as he finished with 11 points. So the Heat advance to the second round and have tons of momentum. They just shut down a really good player in Trae Young. His shooting percentage was off, and the Heat's defense just looked elite. They stopped Trae pretty much every game this series. His highest points were 25. I figured he would at least get 30 at least once or twice, but he couldn't do that. And he's a great passer too. He usually gets about 10 assists per game, and he was held to not even passing that great. So kudos to the Heat. As for the next series, we have my Boston Celtics beating the Nets in 4 games. They swept them. Jason Tatum with 29 points per game, Jaylen Brown with 22 points per game, Marcus Smart with 16.5 points per game to go with 7 assists per game, Al Horford with 13.7 points per game, and 7.5 rebounds per game. As for Grant Williams, he had 11 points per game off the bench. And as for the Nets, Kevin Durant, 26 points per game, Kyrie Irving, 21 points per game, Bruce Brown with 14 points per game, and Goran Dragic with 10.5 points per game coming off the bench, and so did Nick Claxton. He also had 10.5 points per game coming off the bench. So the Celtics win game 1, 115-114. Tatum dropped 31 and had a last-second buzzer-beater layup. And Smart, Horford, and Jaylen Brown each had 20 points or more. Kyrie Irving had 39 points in the loss, and Kevin Durant had 23 points, but also had 6 turnovers that game. It was a crucial part of the Nets' loss. As for game 2, the Celtics won 114-107. 7 Celtics players were in double figures. Kevin Durant had 27 points, but also had 6 turnovers again. And Kyrie was shut down with only 10 points. And the Nets, they were winning at one point, but they blew a 17-point lead and allowed the Celtics to get back into it and win. Game 3, the Celtics won 109-103. Jason Tatum had 39. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, very bad game as they each only had 16 points. The final game, which was game 4, the Celtics won 116-112. Tatum with 29 points. Smart and Brown each with 20, and Kevin Durant had 39 points, but also had 4 turnovers in that game as well, as the Nets were swept. And that stunned me because I didn't expect a sweep from the Celtics. I expected them to win, but hey, I would have never guessed a sweep. And the Celtics got it done with a lot of defense. They made it really tough for Kevin Durant to score. They made it really tough for Kyrie Irving to score. And the Nets just looked defeated after the second game. KD couldn't carry them. Kyrie couldn't step up at moments. And they just had so much going on this season with Kevin Durant's injury, the Kyrie Irving thing with him not being able to play games at home, then him being able to play games at home, the James Harden drama of him wanting out, and then getting traded for Ben Simmons, and then Ben Simmons drama of him saying, oh, he'll play, and then he won't play. Just a whole big mess for the Nets this year. And Nash, he really did not do a great job coaching. They brought him in there to kind of, not even really be the coach. He just kind of lets his players coach in a sense, and it's not going to get them far. The Nets definitely need a solid coach. Next series is the Bucks beating the Bulls in 5 games. Giannis had 28.5 points per game, 13.5 rebounds per game, and 6 assists per game. Drew Holiday, 16.5 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 6.8 assists per game. Brook Lopez, 13 points per game. Grayson Allen, 13 points per game. And Bobby Portis, 11.5 points per game and 11.5 rebounds per game. As for Bulls, DeMar DeRozan, 20.8 points per game. Zach LaVine, 19.2 points per game in just 4 games. And Nikola Vucevic, 19.4 points per game and 10.5 rebounds per game. So in game 1, the Bucks won 93-86. Giannis had a 27-16 game. Vucevic had 24-17. And the Bucks had a big lead, but the Bulls fought back and almost made it interesting, but it just wasn't enough for them to get the win. In game 2, the Bulls, however, won 114-110. Thanks to 41 points by DeMar DeRozan. Giannis had 33, 18, and 9. And in Game 3, the Bucks bounced back 111-181. Grayson Allen scored the most points with 22 points in that game. For Game 4, the Bucks win 119-95. Giannis with 32 points and 17 rebounds. And Grayson Allen off the bench with 27 points. And in Game 5, where the Bucks close out, they won 116-110. Giannis had 33 points to go with 17 rebounds. And the Bucks just cruised past the Bulls. Giannis had an amazing series. The only downside to the Bucks win is that Chris Middleton is now out for maybe the remainder of the playoffs with the torn MCL. Not a really good look for the Bucks because Chris Middleton, as we know, great shooter, great player. So it's just really tough for the Bucks without him. And the Bulls did what they could. I mean, they really weren't expected to win this matchup. DeMar DeRozan, he had his moments, but, everyone calls him defrozen, and he did show up like that a few games in the playoffs and just did not do that well. The final series is the Sixers beating the Raptors in 6 games. Joel Embiid averaged 26 points per game along with 11 rebounds per game. James Harden averaged 19 points per game to go with 10 assists per game. Tyrese Maxey, 21 points per game. And Tobias Harris, 17.8 points per game and 9.5 rebounds per game. As for the Raptors, they had Pascal Siakam with 22.8 points per game. Fred VanVleet in just 4 games, 13.7 points per game. Also in just 4 games, Scotty Barnes, the rookie, aka the rookie of the year, averaged 13 points per game. And Gary Trent Jr., 15.3 points per game. So in Game 1, the Sixers dominated 113-111. In Game 2, it was the same type of domination as the Sixers won 112-97. Game 3 is where it got interesting. The Sixers did win 104-101 in overtime. And Joel Embiid had a crazy step back 3 for the game winner. And in Game 4, the Raptors bounced back, though, 110-102. Pascal Siakam with 34 points. And in Game 5, the Raptors also win 103-88. Pascal Siakam with 23 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists in that game. But in Game 6, the Sixers blow out the Raptors 132-97. Embiid with 33 points, and Harden had 15 assists on the night. And the Sixers were able to get past the Raptors, even though things got sketchy for them. They took a 3-0 lead. The Raptors won 2 straight to make it a 3-2 lead for the Sixers. But the Sixers were able to secure the win, secure the series in Game 6, and closed it in Toronto. But I did see that in Game 6 that Joel Embiid had a fractured bone in his face, so he could miss some time. That's not good news if you're a Sixers fan. And the Raptors, you know, they hung around, they showed grit and toughness, but were not able to get it done. Well, that's it for the Eastern Conference wrap-up for the playoffs in the first round. I'm going to do the Western Conference real soon. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Instagram, take care, and please tune in to my next video for the Western Conference playoff wrap-up.